Hey guys, it's Pastor Yummy with Life 360 Weston, and today this video is for Wednesday, the 6th of August, 2025. Yes, I know this day well. So today we're continuing in the book of 1 Corinthians. So go ahead and get out your Bible, maybe that second cup of coffee now, and open them up to 1 Corinthians chapter 7. Follow along with me. Excuse me. I'm going to be reading today in the New International Version, the NIV. So, Lord, be with us today and open our eyes so that we can see and discern your truth and help that to transform our very lives today. So let's, without further delay, let's dive right in. 1 Corinthians chapter 7, and it begins like this. Now, for the matters you wrote about, it is good for a man not to have sexual relations with a woman. So, interesting. For the matters you wrote about. So, apparently, Paul is, writing to them, but they are writing back to Paul. So, this is something that Paul's addressing from a letter he received from this body of believers. So, he says, it is good for a man not to have sexual relations with a woman, but since sexual immorality is occurring, each man should have sexual relations with his own wife, and each woman with her own husband. The husband should fulfill his marital duty to his wife, and likewise the wife to her husband. So, let me just stop right there. This is very interesting because you have to realize this was written to a culture whereas the woman didn't have these kind of rights. It was mainly that when they got married, the woman was to fulfill the man's sexual desires, and so this would be a little strange for men to hear this phrase, especially even it says first that each man. The husband should fulfill his marital duty to his wife. So that sometimes people may accuse Paul of being like a bigot, not fair to women. But Paul was really advocating for, I think, for you could say for this equality, but it goes far beyond that. It was just sort of how God had originally made Adam and Eve in the garden to walking side by side. There wasn't any power struggles until after the fall. So this is what Paul is saying, is he's sort of going back to pre-fall, just that this was how, originally God intended it to be. So, let me see, where am I now? Okay. Verse 4, the wife does not have authority over her own body, but yields it to her husband. So, yeah, they'd be thinking, yeah, that sounds right. In the same way, the husband does not have authority over his own body, but yields it to the wife. Oh, really? They're probably thinking, really? Okay. Now, verse 5, do not deprive each other except perhaps by mutual consent and for a time, so that you may devote yourselves to prayer. So he's saying, okay, well, here's the conditions here that, maybe both of you are sensing that you really want to spend this time in prayer. So sure. So just if you decide this together, that he's saying, fine, that's a great idea. But then he says, then come together again so that Satan will not tempt you because of your lack of self-control. 6, I say this as a concession, not as a command. I wish that all of you were as I am, Paul says. But each of you has your own gift from God. One has this gift and another has that. So Paul was telling them, he had a gift of celibacy. He had a gift of being single. And he's telling them, that he wishes, like they were like he is, that he he can devote his whole time and energy for the Lord and for this mission that he, just for his life to be devoted to God. Let me see here. So you'll notice that a lot of this section, he is saying, like, I say this as a concession, not as a command. So he doesn't give, we'll look and see. He doesn't give too many commands here. He's writing this like, okay, this is, a good idea. Let's see. Okay. Now, verse 8. Now to the unmarried and to the widows, I say, it is good for them to stay unmarried as I do. So, as Paul. So, stay unmarried as I do. So, that possibly means, of course, we know Paul was single at the time. Maybe he was married. Maybe he was himself a widower. We don't know that for sure. Verse 9, but if they cannot control themselves, they should marry, for it is better to marry than to burn with passion. Saying, don't try, like if you don't have this gift, don't fake it, because it's not going to work out. To the married, I give this command, not I, but the Lord. Now, when Paul says this, it doesn't mean that the other things, when Paul gives us commands, they're just like from him and not from the Lord, because Paul's speaking as an apostle, as a prophet. So every command he gives does have the apostolic authority. What he means when he says, not I, but the Lord, meaning that Jesus has said this. Like you can find it probably in the Gospels, but this is something that he knows that when Jesus was on the earth, that he said this. So he's giving now a command, an example of that, a command that is recorded that Jesus had previously given. So, and which is this: a wife must not separate from her husband, but if she does, she must remain unmarried or else be reconciled to her husband, and a husband must not divorce his wife. Now, verse 12 says, to the rest I say this, I, not the Lord. So now he's going back. He's still speaking with his full apostolic authority. He's not saying, okay, this is my opinion. Sometimes he says this. He says, okay, this is just what I think is a good idea. So let's see if this is one of those cases. Yes, I believe it is. He's saying that this is what he does believe is a good idea. Yet he doesn't want to give it as an apostolic command. So let me just make sure I get that straight. If any brother has a wife who is not a believer and she is willing to live with him, he must not divorce her. So if any brother has a wife, so if one of the Christians has a wife that is an unbeliever, she said, and is still willing to live with them, don't divorce her. 13. And if a woman has a husband who is not a believer and he is willing to live with her, she must not divorce him. For the unbelieving husband has been sanctified through the wife, and the unbelieving wife has been sanctified through her believing husband. Otherwise, your children would be unclean, but as it is, they are holy. So, there's a few things going on here. So about living with the unbeliever, how are they sanctified by the believer? Well, they're not sanctified like they're saved. What he's talking about, they're being sanctified by the believing person. And I'm going to pause because I'm going to sneeze here. Okay, I'm thankful for that little pause button because, wow, I just had to sneeze. And I hate to sneeze, during these videos. But, okay, so it doesn't mean that the believer is saving that person by sanctified, but being around a believer, for an unbeliever to live in that close of proximity with a believer, the influence on that believer is very profound, very profound. And we know many cases where the husband, say, has been won over by the unbelieving wife just by her example. Not, she doesn't like preach to him every day, but she lives that in front of him, and he does become saved. And the same with the children. The children, if they were in a household, it says, otherwise your children would be unclean. If they're in a household and they do not from either parent receive instruction about the Lord and witness the parents' faith and witness the parents living this Christian life, then it's very, very hard on the children. And they have such an advantage if they are in that atmosphere. And I know just from, raising our own daughter and now seeing the grandkids that we have and being able to pray with them and just worshiping God in front of them. And they just like automatically worship God, even at 2 and 3. Well, now 4. Even at 2 and 4, they just like know how to worship. So this is an amazing thing with children. When they are around believers at a young age, it's like their spirit just grasps it and just connects with the Spirit of God within you. So that's sort of what this passage is meaning here. Now, he gives this instruction here, but if the unbeliever leaves, let it be so. The brother or the sister is not bound in such circumstances. God has called us to live in peace. How do you know, wife, whether you will save your husband? Or how do you know, husband, whether you will save your wife? And by you will save your wife, you know what he means is that you will be that instrument the Lord uses to bring the person to himself. So, let me look back here. Okay. So, yes, I think I was wrong. I want to go back and correct myself here, because Paul is saying, as he does, sort of jumps around, and sometimes I can't, like, jump with him. So, Paul, in this case, when he says, I, not the Lord, he's always speaking with his apostolic authority. Sometimes he says, this is my opinion. No, this is not that case. I said it was, I was wrong. Because earlier he does give sort of his opinion, like I wish, when he says, I wish you would stay single, like I am, that he's not giving that as any command. He's just saying that he thinks that's a good idea. So, let me correct myself. So he is saying this, not the Lord, meaning these are things that the Lord has given to Paul with his apostolic authority to pass on to us. It's not anything that Jesus said that is recorded that he said when he was on the earth. So, sorry about that. Now, let's continue with verse 17. Nevertheless, each person should live as a believer in whatever situation the Lord has assigned to them, just as God has called them. This is a rule I lay down in all the churches. Was a man already circumcised when he was called? He should not become uncircumcised. Was a man uncircumcised when he was called? He should not be circumcised. Circumcision is nothing. Wow. So this, you understand, he's really, there's some Judaizers, some Jewish believers that are not happy with Paul, some of this stuff Paul is saying. Says, circumcision is nothing, uncircumcision is nothing. Keeping God's command is what counts. That's everything. Keeping God's commands, that is everything. Each person should remain in the situation where they were in when God called them. 21. Were you a slave when God called you? Don't let it trouble you. Although, if you can gain your freedom, yeah, of course, do so. For the one who was a slave when called to faith in the Lord is the Lord's freed person. Similarly, the one who was free when called is Christ's slave. So he's just showing that this is how life is in the Lord. It's like, so you're a slave? Well, you're really not a slave because Christ has freed you. You are free in your spirit. And Paul has said this before, even in regards to people who have a lot of material wealth in this earth. They're not to consider themselves above those who are really poor, and the really poor, he says to them that that they are very blessed. So he just balances things out like this. We're all sort of at the same level at the foot of the cross. Verse 23, you were bought at a price. Do not become slaves of a human being. So don't let that bother you. Even if you are a physical slave, he's like, no, you were bought, remember, at the highest price possible. Don't become slaves of a human. You're not trapped like that. Brothers and sisters, each person as responsible to God should remain in the situation they were in when God called them. Because remember, God uses every person within their context, within their circle. It's like, don't leave that. Now, there's sometimes you may have to, I know some people who have come to the Lord thoroughly inundated, like immersed in this life of crime, or just some immorality, just very immersed in something like that. And yes, people have had to leave living in this constant sinful environment, and that's not what he's talking about here. So now he says about virgins, I have no command from the Lord. So he's saying, God isn't giving me a command to give to you, but I give a judgment as one who by the Lord's mercy is trustworthy. So he's saying, okay, you can just learn from me. I know what I'm talking about here. Because of the present crisis, I think it is good for a man to remain as he is. Now, it's debated what that means. Because of this present crisis. Some people think, well, there was something going on there, or this persecution starts something, but really, I think that I've just read a really good case for this being that this present crisis, meaning that they're thinking that the Lord is going to return, soon. The Apostle Paul had no idea we would be talking about this in 2025. Over 2,000 years later, they were expecting Christ to return soon. So they think that some scholars believe that they were really looking forward, even Paul, because remember, God did not let Paul know when Jesus was coming back. He did not know. So anyway, that is we are unsure of that, but let's see what we are sure of. I think that it's good for a man to remain as he is. Then verse 27, are you pledged to a woman? Do not seek to be released. Are you free from such a commitment? Do not look for a wife, but if you do marry, you have not sinned. And if a virgin marries, she has not sinned. And virgin, here can mean a young woman. She has not sinned. But those who marry will face many troubles in this life, and I want to spare you this. So he's saying that, the time is short. We really need to concentrate on living for the Lord. And I just want to spare you. Not that it's bad, to be happily married and to have children and grandchildren. That is a wonderful thing. But he's saying that it still comes with a lot of it takes a lot of time, put it this way. And so when you are trying to, like Paul, going out and preaching and teaching and going from place to place and really being a mentor to a lot of people, that then if he were doing that and he had a wife and a family, his work would be hindered. So, I think maybe that's one of the reasons God gave him that gift. He was very happy with that gift of being single. So he's just, now this is one of the places like I was talking about. He's just given his opinion. He's telling him that, as I say this, if it's really resonating with you and this is you, then go ahead and just take my advice. Other people are going to listen to that and say, no, I'm not going to, they don't have the calling to do that. And he's saying that's, he gets that. That's okay. So he's explaining it a little bit here in 29. He says, what I mean, brothers and sisters, is that the time is short. So he's explaining the time is short. From now on, those who have wives should live as if they do not. So we're going to have to explain that. Those who mourn as if they did not. Those who are happy as if they were not. Those who buy something as if it were not theirs to keep. Very interesting. Those who use the things of this world as if not engrossed in them. For this world in its present form is passing away. So, wow, major perspective here. Even if you are married, I think part of that means that, just don't get all wrapped up into things. Like sometimes we take things like overly serious, and then those who mourn as if they did not. It's like this is all temporary. Those who are happy as if they were not. It's like it's all temporary. Keep it in perspective. And I really like his advice about when you're buying things, those who buy something as if it weren't really theirs to keep. And that's a really good thing, especially for us in the West who have some things to keep in mind that they're just things, they're going to be passing away. These are temporary things, and they're really not that great. I mean, even if we have this mansion and all different fancy cars and clothes, it's just not that great. So keep it in perspective. It's going to pass away anyway. It's just not that great. So, 32. I would like you to be free from concern. An unmarried man is concerned about the Lord's affairs, how he can please the Lord. But a married man is concerned about the affairs of this world, how he can please his wife. So, yeah, we know that's true. And as a wife, yeah, it can, we know how that is, wives. And his interests are divided. An unmarried woman or virgin is concerned about the Lord's affairs. Her aim is to be devoted to the Lord in both body and spirit. So can really get some things done as a single woman. But a married woman is concerned about the affairs of this world, just like a married man, how she can please her husband. I am saying this for your own good, not to restrict you. So it's great that he totally clarifies this. I'm not saying this to take your fun away, to restrict you, but that you may live in a right way in undivided devotion to the Lord. So that's his purpose in telling them. So 36, if anyone is worried that he might not be acting honorably towards the virgin, the young woman he is engaged to, and if his passions are too strong and he feels he ought to marry, he should do so. He should do as he wants. He is not sinning. They should get married. But the man who has settled the matter in his own mind, who is under no compulsion, but has control over his own will, and who has made up his mind not to marry the virgin, this man also does the right thing. So then, he who marries the virgin does right, but he who does not marry her does better, according to Paul. He's saying that in his opinion. 39. A woman is bound to her husband as long as he lives, but if her husband dies, she is free to marry anyone she wishes. It is till death do we part, but he must belong to the Lord, of course. In my judgment, of course, here Paul goes again. In my judgment, she is happier if she stays as she is. And I think that I too have the Spirit of God. So he's saying that just with the Holy Spirit within him, that he knows that marriage and family responsibilities, it can be a great thing, but it can really restrict someone for what they can do for the Lord. So he just gives his opinion, but he's saying it's a good opinion, and it's an opinion coming from someone who knows what they're talking about. So let's take that into consideration. If we are married, we don't have to try to be not married. If we are single, we can just be happy in that. And sometimes in church environments, it's like everything is designed around married people and families, but the people who really advanced the gospel a lot were single people, and they still are today, especially on the mission field. A lot of single missionaries, and they are, passionate for the Lord, and get things done very effectively. So if that's you, if you are a single person, just really embrace it and just ask God what you can do for the kingdom that maybe a married person would not have the freedom to do. So may God be with you guys, and I will be back tomorrow. We'll continue in 1 Corinthians, and tomorrow we're going to be on 1 Corinthians chapter 8. So until then, you guys have a great rest of your day.